Thank you very much. It's an honor and a privilege for me to be here today. This part of Ohio where I went through many years ago in 1861, just up the river nearby. So it's an honor for me to be here today to honor all the military people in our long history. From the Revolution to the present day, we're here to honor all those men and women who have served in our armed forces to protect our freedoms that our founding fathers mentioned many, many years ago. It is my distinct honor now to introduce to you Boulevard 318, who will present the colors to us today. Thank you very much.
Feet down, hold hands, shoulder, forward, forward, on. Shoulders, left, forward, on. Feet down, hold, right, wheel, off, right, stay. Forward, on. Present. Hold.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, pledge allegiance. All of you join me. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, cover.
I'd like to do a veteran song today to honor all of our veterans here, and we will mention in our song all the wars and conflicts that has carried through with the United States.
Hey!
Thank you. From there.
National anthem.
Shoulder. Detail. Forward.
Right.
Back.
Detail.
Forward. Back.
Detail. Up. Right. Back. Detail.
Expect.
All three fire. Excellent. Two. This one's ready to go. This one's ready to go. These three are okay. I'll take them up. We're done.
Detail. Now face.
Oh, really?
whatever we've got.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-oh. My name is Sergeant Cooper. I'm with the United States Regiment of Riflemen. We fought during the War of 1812. Of course, this year begins the bicentennial commemorations of the war. It's the last war that we had with England, and it wound up giving us not only our national anthem, but the largest land boundary that hasn't been defended until recent history. We haven't had any conflicts with Canada since 1815, at least armed conflicts. And ever since then, we've been portraying the regiment and the heroes that fought during the war on both sides, and including our native population. The regular Army doesn't care. They just want you, they'll train you to load and fire as fast as possible. We want you to actually hit something.
So you just go around and you ask them if they can shoot and you watch?
Well, most people in Ohio can shoot.
Oh.
Because, you know, in 1812, yes, we've got some settled areas, but a lot of these guys are still frontiersmen. My own ancestor that was a militiaman with my name, I have other family members that don't have my name, but they came into Ohio from Kentucky and were making land improvements, basically clearing the land and moving on. They were frontiersmen, and this was a frontier territory still. This was also the front line for the war. The British wanted to create what they referred to as an Indian buffer state. So the native population, the Shawnee in particular, would have claimed all of Ohio, Shawnee, Delaware, Iroquois, and Ohio, Illinois, Michigan, now Wisconsin, all of that area would have been an Indian Confederation state had we drastically lost the war. Now, I can't say that we necessarily won the war, even though some people claim that. It was more of a draw, but the treaty does not mention anything about the Indians in it. So the Indians definitely lost that war. My particular unit fought Tecumseh several times, or troops under Tecumseh's command. And Tecumseh, of course, was the major leader behind the Indian state. He winds up being killed at the Battle of the Thames in 1813. Ohio has a lot of history with the War of 1812. We've got Perry's Monument and Peace Memorial for the Battle of Lake Erie. Fort Meigs is the largest rebuilt 1812 fort. We've got a lot of sites that are celebrating War of 1812 commemorations this year and in the future years, everywhere from Chillicothe to Toledo, basically, Cleveland. So we've got a lot of people that are getting more interested in the War of 1812 and learning more about its history, and we're digging a little bit deeper into those archives now too. These weapons don't have bayonets. Bayonets, of course, being what we think of with a lot of these weapons. You know, you give them a few shots and then you charge them with the bayonet. You run them off the battlefield. My mess tins there, I've got my copper cup that I had a coppersmith make for me. Everything here is to maintain the weapon because that's the important part. And then my personal items over here, I've actually got a drill manual. And this is the Book of John, because I'm allowed to carry a Bible, and I actually have a couple personal items and a package for my wife, and stuff to keep me clean and taken care of.
Okay. Hello, my name is John Cimarosti. I'm portraying Private John Coulter of the Lewis and Clark Expedition. I was part of a reenactment group that made the journey as a group from Washington, D.C. to Elizabeth, Pennsylvania, all the way out to the Pacific Coast and back. As a volunteer group, our members, we had a membership of around 300 people during the bicentennial, which was 2004 through 2006. The group did pass through Cincinnati in 2003 because historically Lewis and men came down the Ohio River after they left Elizabeth, Pennsylvania, with the keelboat and one of the Red Perrots. Now, as a member of the expedition, I portrayed one of the 9 young men from Kentucky. So my military uniform is a replica, of course, of what the uniform would have looked like for one of the 9 young men. The military round hat was an issued hat that was black beaver fur with a white trim. The black bear fur on top and the white-tailed deer is more or less decoration, but we know what the military uniforms look like because of the journals that the men kept along the way. Very few of the artifacts actually exist, and the ones that do are in museums. So as a reenactor, I portrayed John Coulter. I am not a descendant, I am not a relative, I'm not even from Kentucky. However, we basically have the same initials, so therefore when I picked one of the members, I picked John Coulter. Again, a uniform is a little bit different. The military of the time would have had the blues coat, as they call it. It's more of a traditional military coat of early 1803. Mine was more of a butternut color and a little bit darker and a little bit longer in length. I come to Waldschmidt House about once a year or so, talking about the Lewis and Clark expedition. Often people wonder what Lewis and Clark has to do with Ohio. Well, Lewis and Clark actually met in the Ohio country in the late 1700s. When Ohio became a state in 1803, the Waldschmidt House was built around that same time period. Around that time period, when that house was built, Lewis and Clark were getting their belongings and men together to make the journey out west, and more or less doubling the size of the United States after they had purchased the Louisiana Purchase. So that's why I'm here today, kind of talking a little bit about the Lewis and Clark expedition and talking about early Ohio history.
Hey!
I said earlier, intertribal means it's for all people. We are a intertribal group. As I said, we travel all over. We do powwows. We try to represent who we are in a good way. We are Cherokee. We are Shawnee. We are Cree Indians. We are family. I've been doing this, me and my brother, my wife, my son, my friends, basically our whole lives, in either one form or another. Whether it's in the woods, working on our Indian village where we live, or whether we're out in the public demonstrating and educating people on our culture. Okay, with that, we're going to have my brother-in-law who's going to come out. We'll see what kind of dance. We'll let him choose. We'll let him explain his regalia.
How you guys doing today? A little bit about my regalia. I look a little bit different than the rest of them. When we go around to these events, when I dress like this is what you would see at the modern day powwow. When you go to the reenactments and these types of festivals, you'll see a lot of historical time period clothing going on, and that's what most of the brothers and friends are dressed as today. And, I mean, they're dressed in time period, which is going to give you a sense of what they might have worn back in the day. Everything on me, I've got the beaded box, beaded cuffs, bright colors. This has all come about since, I mean, the move to the reservations, they continue their gatherings, they continue their ways, and they wanted to keep their traditions alive. So the best way to do that was to have these powwows. And as times continue to progress, things got flashier. For a lot of Native Americans, these powwows are like sports to them. I mean, they go around, they compete, there's money that can be made from it. Some of them, this is what they do for a livelihood. So, I mean, if you ever YouTube or you go to these things, you're either going to see, I mean, some unbelievable regalia. A lot of times we won't call these costumes, they're not costumes. I mean, they call them rigs, they call them regalia, but it's not a costume. It's not something we're dressing up pretending to be. It's something that's within us. I've been with Mark now 5 years. Drumming with them 5 years. They've been doing this most of their lives. It's been a path that we've come across and a journey that has changed my life. So we hope you enjoy what you're seeing today. So we're going to just do a straight traditional dance, what they call the powwow circuit. A lot of times you'll see these dances, they're going to tell stories. Later on you might see a sneak up where they're down hunting. This is just going to be a traditional straight men's traditional, and we hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
you very much. And with that, we will have my nephew's wife. Thank you, sir. Here, take, hey, sir. We will have my nephew's wife, Becky. She's going to do a special, and she can explain this dance.
By the women only. This is a storytelling dance. It's an Eastern style dance. You might not see it too much in the West or the South. This dance is pretty much a woman explaining her life whenever she's growing up. Now there's 4 basic movements of the blanket that's very important. When the blanket starts up here, this means it's the story of the mother or woman inside of her mother's belly. When the blanket opens up, it's the story of how she was born. When the blanket moves around, this represents of all the things that she's learned in childhood, adolescence, when she's married, taking care of the children, taking care of the family, the husband. And the last one, the more important of the blanket is whenever it's laid down. This represents she goes to spirit.
Hey, 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 hey.
about shawl dance? She's doing shawl dance. All right, this is a ladies' traditional dance. This dance would have been done not by the elder ladies, but the married women. Now, this dance will be a lot slower. They are married, so they are not looking for a mate. Now, in some of the other dances, the fancy shawl dances, the younger girls would be out there doing very, very quick movements, very colorful. They might be trying to attract a mate, just like prairie chicken in the Great Western Plains, the way that they dance. The males would do their dance to attract the mates, so would the ladies. So, but this is for the married ladies, and they are honoring and respecting. What are we walking on today? Remember our little story? What is this called? Mother Earth, and she's alive, right? So they are going to honor Mother Earth because she is alive. And how do we know she's alive? Each spring, when she awakes, the leaves, the trees, and the flowers, and all the plants, herbal and non-herbal, edible and non-edible plants become alive. So she is our mother. Only the women can give birth. We have the highest respect for our ladies. They give rebirth. They come alive. They rejuvenate. So we hope you enjoy this dance.
instructor. And we started by a gentleman by the name of Charles O. Southern. And we are now 59 members strong. It goes varies each year. And we tell the story of the gentleman. You see the picture to my left. Some of those gentlemen there, only 5 of those left alive by the original went down to Tuskegee through the program.
These were the originals?
Yes, those are the originals. And out of those 5, there's one young man by the name of Les Edwards, 88 years young. He gets around better than all of us.
Oh, wow.
He loves telling history.
Okay.
Well, are you a member of the group?
I'm vice president of Cincinnati chapter. Mr. Charles is left the president of the chapter.
Okay.
And like I said, events like this, we go out and tell the story. We never get tired of doing that. He spent 30 years in the Air Force, came out as a master sergeant. I spent 23 years in the Air Force, came out as a tech sergeant.
Thank you for your service.
You're welcome. Oh, pardon my sitting out.
No. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes. Yeah, and when Desert Storm kicked off, it was down at Homestead Air Force Base, and we were learning what we call hot pits. That's refueling an airplane with the engine still running. While ordnance guys put ordnance on one side, we refueled the other side and put the ordnance on the left side of the airplane and got right back up again.
It's dangerous to fuel up when it's hot, right?
Mm-hmm. It is. JP4 would ignite at 87.7 degrees Fahrenheit, and only avgas goes up to 72.5 degrees Fahrenheit. Just by sitting on a table on a glass, it will ignite.
Wow.
But it was after the 3rd job I had in the Air Force. I was there in air traffic controlling and disaster preparedness. I went out and identified IEDs, and then my last career field was fuels management specialist. And the only shame I have is when I was in the Air Force from 1978 to 1999. I found out about the Tuskegee Airmen in 1982. It's a long period of time. I went to school down south at Knoxville College, and a lot of people from Tuskegee, Alabama didn't know anything about the program until later on in life. I'm so glad I did. Because right now, I've been a member of this unit since 2000, and we've been around quite a few places telling the story about Tuskegee Airmen. And as you see by this picture here, from Benjamin O. Davis all the way down to the young man being a boomer in the KC-135. We're able to do all kinds of jobs because these gentlemen stuck up, put on the back of their shoulders.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Defeat the word inferior. They were told they couldn't learn. And look to my left, my right, the cockpit of a P-51 aircraft. There's quite a few movements in that airplane needing to fly it. It takes a normal person a year and a half to learn to fly the airplane. They did it in 9 months.
Wow.
Because they were determined.
That's on W2?
Yes.
I didn't know they were that sophisticated in W2.
Because your left hand is going so much, and you know if you're right-handed, you know you're going to throttle feed and throttle, plus the stick in the middle, and you got to do 180 degrees to see everything around it. So they flew the P-30, the P-40, P-39, P-47. This is the early D model. This is the upgraded D model with the canopy on top. C model P-51 and the D model of the P-51. This is where they became famous. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right. Now, this particular aircraft here, Mr. Roscoe Brown, Lieutenant Roscoe Brown, shot down the first jet aircraft in an aerial combat over Berlin. The gentleman shot down 3 airplanes, 3 of those jets in that sequence. And how it was doing it, you notice the airplane came down through the formation. Well, Roscoe went down with him and found his P-51 was heavier than the 262. Got a perfect 9-degree shot on it. And the other guy said, oh, that's how you do it. They just follow through the same thing. They damaged 8 and shot down 3. And of course, this 262 is it's 100 mile an hour faster than this airplane here, but a young man in this environment knows his airplane can defeat anybody.
Knows its limitations.
3 Springfield pattern rifle. This would have been standard issue to both Confederate and Union forces. About 1862, the end of the war. It's 58 caliber rifle with a range of about 300 yards.
Do not hurt yourself with my band.
It's fun. Which is about comparable to modern rifles. During several engagements, there were recorded rifle kills at over a mile, which is just about the record for a modern sniper rifle kill. All right, I got to think about that. To load this weapon, we have 9 steps. We're going to ban it off for them. Well, to be in the Army, number 1, we had to have 2 teeth touching. And to do that, you have to tear out the paper cartridge. Now, I'm not sure if you can see it, but right here we have paper cartridges, and they are a waxy, almost cardboard-like paper that is supposed to be waterproof, but really kind of wasn't. And so the soldier would usually carry about anywhere from 40 to 60 of those in his cartridge box. And when you take it, you bite the end off of it, you pour the powder in, push the bullet in the paper. Now, Army regulations said to use your pinky finger, because if the gun went off, you weren't losing much. That was the idea. Then you take your ramrod, which usually would be rusted in, but today you got lucky, and then you just tap it. Now, a lot of the movies you see where they're doing this as hard as they can, that's heavy, soft lead. You can bend that with your fingers. So you do that, it'll deform and barely won't be able to shoot it. So you just tap it down, take the ramrod back out, and again, regulations said to put it back in the holder, but more often than not, they just threw it to the ground. Then you take it up to what's called half-cock. Now, half-cock is supposed to be the safety of the weapon, but it's dubious at best. If you pull the trigger, the hammer will not go down, and if you push it, the hammer isn't supposed to go down either. But you carry this around for a little while, things start to rattle, and it doesn't always work. So you take what's called a percussion cap, which small ones right there, which are little brass and copper caps full of fulminated mercury, which is just a compound that explodes under pressure. You put that on the firing nipple, take it to full cock, aim and fire. The hammer goes down, which hits the cap, which explodes, and shoots sparks into the barrel, which ignites the powder and shoots the ball. Now that obviously takes a very long time to do. Regulations said a good soldier could shoot 3 aimed shots a minute, which is hollow, believe me. It was more like 2, probably even 1. When you get into combat, you get nervous, you make mistakes, you go back, you fix them, you forget where you are, and you can very, very easily forget to fire. It wasn't uncommon at all for soldiers to get into engagements and to load several rounds, forget to fire, or just put caps on and fire, or not even use the gun at all. It was a complicated process that really took some experience to get just right.
Okay, I guess I'll start with the bayonet itself. Well, actually, let me start off by saying that what he has is a Springfield rifle, and this is an Enfield rifle. This was imported from England. The bayonet is, if you can see it, is a tricornered weapon, and what it is that you actually have now 3 weapons in one. The primary thing is this would shoot the bullet. But you also had what they called a melee weapon, which meant this could be used as a club. If you look at the end of this thing, would you hold the rifle up from the butt? You will see a piece of metal right here. This was not put there to drive the soldier insane, keeping it clean. This was if somebody was attacking you, you had a weapon that you could hit him in the face, the chest, or anywhere below. If you really got scared, you would swinging like that. That's also where this thing came in. Now, it's not sharp on the edges. It was meant mainly to pierce with. It has 2 blood tracks right down here. That meant if you stabbed somebody, the blood was going to spill out that way instead of up in your face. So it was, unfortunately, thought out. But by the time the Civil War came around, we were still using Napoleonic tactics, which really emphasizes this particular weapon, because really the old guns were only effective for a few yards. These got almost a mile in some cases. So this became pretty much useless. But it was a wonderful candle holder. It was your first shish kebab. It was your soup stirrer. It was a lot of things other than what it was originally designed for, which was stabbing people. And even then, its second most common use was kind of gruesome. You had to get your buddies off the battlefield. Unfortunately, after a couple of hours in the sun, the flesh starts to melt away from the body, and the only way to keep the goo from getting on you was to pierce either side of the shoulder with these things and drag. So it was, even though it was an antiquated weapon, it was still, unfortunately, very useful on the battlefield. Now over here, and I'll get out the Colt Army revolver. These were not used by the common soldier. Now, as you can see, this is a pretty heavy weapon. And you just strapping that on your side, that's going to get heavy after a while. And you already had 40 rounds of ammunition and about a 1-pound pouch on your hip anyway. So this was largely used only by officers. And that was for disciplinary purposes. If your men started to break and run, you were to haul this baby out, pull back on the hammer, and if you saw one, you fired, and that was the end of him. And that the idea was you have to be more afraid of your officers than you are of the enemy. One of my favorite things about this is one of the guns that supposedly won the West, and it probably did. But if you'll ever watch the 50s TV shows, they have somebody always pulling the hammer back and doing... That will not work with these guns. First off, you only got 5 rounds. Second off, I don't see how you're aiming at anything. And then finally, the recoil on this thing, your arm was going to do that number. Mm-hmm. So that's probably why they went over to the Dragoon. Now, actually, according to Ned, this is what your police would adopt later on after the Civil War. As you can see, a lot lighter and everything else, and a few of the men would actually eventually try to purchase these things just as a backup weapon, but not too many. So, now that we've talked about most of the weapons, I guess I'll go over to the saber. Okay. Now, the saber within itself was not particularly useful weapon. We said how the bayonet had already seen its day. Well, generally by the Civil War, the saber had also pretty much seen its day. I mean, actually, its effective range is about to where my arm's length is at. So if you're that close to an enemy, you're pretty much had it. What a lot of people forget, and they do this a lot in Hollywood, is they want this to be a stabbing weapon. And it does have a point on it, but its primary is a hacking weapon. It goes across. The blade is sharp through here, and the blood grooves are on either side. So the ideal is that you go and you hack down. That's why it's also a curved weapon. If it was straight and you got into something, then it's stuck there. But if it's curved, it glances off. That was the ideal behind it anyway. But like I said, by this time, and even though cavalry was still very important, it was more so for get there quickly and lay down suppressing fire or as a reconnaissance tool. This had been more or less relegated to ceremony to the most part and for signaling. Basically, if it's up like this, you were telling your men that you needed them to do something. Either to the left or to the right, forward, but like I said, it was more so a signaling device more than anything else. And that was for very short distances. Which would bring us really to the more deadly of the signaling devices, the bugle, or trumpet or whatever. Now the ideal behind this is that you could hear things at a greater distance than you could see things. So if I wanted to say, my guys on the far right to do something, I would send out the signal, burr, 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 and then give the second thing, because that was their signal, burr, 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 and then I would tell them, charge, or fall back, so on and so forth. So basically, that's what your bugler was for. He was to tell everybody where they were going, what they were doing, and when they were doing it. He was also probably the only guy with a watch, so that at 5 in the morning, you got reveille. Wake up, wake up, wake up. It's time to get, whatever the words to it are. But, and I don't know how to play this thing, so we're not even going to. But the point is that this told you when you got up. This told you when you went to drill. This told you when you could go to the doctor. This told you probably even when you could go to the bathroom. And more importantly, it told you when your day was done and you could rest. But so important as a signaling device this thing was, is that after a while, guys with the long guns figured out, hey, if we kill the guy that's telling everybody what to do, we've already won half the fight. So they started looking for that nice shiny brass, and they figured, okay, target, boom. So now before this time, they would have entire bands. By the end of the Civil War, they didn't have that many instruments left. Another guy that was a really good target was your flag bearers or color bearers. And generally, that told you where you were on the battlefield. This is where all your friends are at. If you don't know where all your friends are at, you have had it. So, and that's why he has this particular symbol. Now, he actually wouldn't carry a gun in battle. His whole thing was to make sure that flag stayed up. It was everybody else's job to try to protect him. But then again, like I said, the accuracy of the long gun had gotten to the point to where, you know, at a half-mile radius, we're knocking him off almost immediately. So generally, and also another thing that was going to get him killed were these stripes. They could see where these stripes were at, and they knew, well, he's a sergeant. He's going to tell these guys what to do. He's in the signal, or he's a color bearer, so he's going to tell people where he's at. If he happens to be next to the guy with the bugle, if we get all these guys, these men are going to probably break and run, and then we're back to trying to scare them with the gun. Trust me, if you've lost your colors, your bugle, and everything else, this is not going to do you a whole world of a lot of good. So, that's basically... you want to take cannons? And...
I'll take care of cannonballs and
okay.
surgery. We have here the 3 basic cannon rounds that would have been used. Now, the artillery had a diagram, it's on the table here, I don't know if you can see it, of the ranges they would use the artillery shots. And the farthest one out will be the case shot. And case shot is essentially just a metal, cast iron, or even iron ball sometimes. It would be hollow and filled with powder. The idea was to get it to explode. Now, unlike in the movies you see, it wouldn't blow up on the ground. The objective was to get it to blow up 6 feet in front and 6 feet above you. So when it did explode, it would break into pieces called shrapnel. And it's funny because the guy who invented the cannonball, his last name was Shrapnel. He was John Shrapnel. So when these would explode, these red-hot pieces of flying metal going at the speed of sound would go in all directions. And they could take out 12, 15, 20 minutes one place around. Now, as the infantry got closer, they'd fire what's called solid shot, which is just a cannonball. What we think of a cannonball, which is solid, just a piece of hunk of metal. Now, again, unlike in movies, they wouldn't try to fire that directly at you because best case scenario, it'd only take out 2 or 3 guys. What they would try to do is fire it at the oblique. So if I'm standing here, it'd come kind of sideways and bounce down the rank. It'd hit you at the knee or the hip or the chest sometimes and take out, you know, how many men it does until it rolls to a stop. And as the infantry got closer, they'd fire canister shot. A canister is just a tin or steel tube. Okay.
Thank you for sharing.
Right. A tin or steel tube full of about 100 of little lead balls. And what it would do is it would turn the cannon into a giant shotgun. And they'd stack these sometimes 2 or even 3 in a barrel. And when they would go off, they just vaporize anything in 100 yards. There's a story out of Gettysburg about a Confederate color bearer got ahead of his regiment and was right in front of a cannon when they fired a double-loaded canister. Well, when the smoke cleared, they went looking for this guy. There wasn't even shoes there. It was just red mist where he had been, 25 seconds before. And there's also on here grape shot. We don't talk about grape shot too much because it wasn't really used on land. It had a tendency. Well, grape shot is essentially a wooden plate with 6 lead balls, a plate, 6 more plate. Do that 4 or 5 times. And when they'd fire it, it had a tendency to just bury itself into the ground. Now the Navy liked them because they'd skip across water. They could get 12 cannonballs firing 1 round, but it kind of interludes into the surgery because the majority of casualties that were operated on during the war were from artillery.
But usually you have a few days here.
It's the World War II guys, they're just getting nuts.
Now, those instruments you see on the table there, the bone saw, the scalpel, the spreader, and the needle and thread, were all a surgeon really would have carried, that's glued down, really would have used during the war. Now, our vice president of the organization is a veterinarian. Those have been new, those are all real. And the way the ammunition was, it was that heavy, soft lead again. So when that hits the body, it deforms and it explodes. And the wound cavities it causes can shatter bone with incredible ease. Today's modern ammunition, metal jacketed rounds, will skip off bones if they hit. Very rarely do they actually break into it. But those rounds, if they hit my arm right here, it'd break the whole arm because the amount of trauma they carry, they were heavy and slow. The surgeons oftentimes had no really other recourse except to operate. I mean, even today, if you break the bone, you have to amputate. But then that's all they could do if it shattered. It shattered.
If your arm shatters in today's world, you still have to get it amputated.
Exactly.
But if it breaks, it can be
Now, medical technology at the time wasn't exactly medieval, but it wasn't much better either way. In 1864, the year before the war was over, milk was pasteurized for the first time in France, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but that was the first big jump in microbiology and the overthing of germs and infection. And so that took, of course, 10 years to jump across the ocean, but they had the knowledge to make automatic rifles and machine guns, and guns that could shoot farther than the gunner could see, but they didn't have the forethought to boil water or to wash their hand after surgery. So the Confederates, as the war progressed, they got more and more desperate. They began around cotton for sutures and dressings. So they used horsehair, which, in order to get it pliable enough, they had to boil it. So they found that the soldiers who had been dressed with the horsehair had a drastically reduced amount of infection because they had boiled this horsehair. That gradually progressed along, and when we think of Civil War medicine, we always think of amputations that are done without anesthesia. Just, some guy screaming in a hospital, or you're sawing off his leg and it's biting down on something, and that almost never happened in the Union. The Confederacy was a different story, but in the North, they usually had access to anesthesia. And I know that if I got shot and somebody was going to cut off my arm or leg without me being conscious, I wouldn't let them do it. And a lot of guys didn't. The most common was ether or chloroform. And there's 5 layers of anesthesia. And today, when we operate, we use a 5th level, which is induced coma. Now, in the Civil War, they really didn't know that, and they really had no way to measure it. So they were scared of using too much because you can kill someone with anesthesia. So when they would do it, they would do like a level 2, level 3, where it's almost like a dreamlike state, if that's appropriately described, where you can see what's going on and you kind of understand, but you don't feel it, and you can't really react. So when you read letters of soldiers saying, "Oh, I went by a field hospital today," and they were cutting down some guy, and he was awake and looking around, and looking at the doctor while he was doing it. Yeah, he may have been awake and he may have been looking, but he certainly didn't feel it. And it was very common after the war for officers to have morphine addiction, because officers usually got morphine because it was better. It's an opiate derivative, and that's very addictive. And so a large percentage of officers who had been worked on during the war died of morphine addiction, and all the infection that occurred therein.
Here at Camp Denison, they actually had barracks that they used for their hospital. They had a huge measles outbreak in 1861. And then also some of the Western campaigns, the Cincinnati hospitals got overfilled, so they brought the wounded out here to Camp Denison. Now this hospital tent would be typical of what they'd use at the rear lines of a battle, and they would probably put about 12 to 15 wounded in this small area. So it was very cramped, and if they were lucky enough to have cots, that's about what they would look like, or they would have straw pallets to lie on. And it would also be typical to maybe have cots or rugs, because some of the volunteer nurses often, if they were following battles around, they would often run for supplies and request stuff from the Christian aid societies and churches around. Right here is a surgical table. This might be inside the tent or outside, depending on the crowding. And surgeons and nurses alike, since they didn't believe in the germ theory yet, because that was just coming about in Europe, they would basically just rinse their hands, wipe it on their apron, and move on. And the only time they actually washed their instruments is when they got too slimy to hold. As you know, there were several amputations during the Civil War, a lot of them due to gangrene, because if they got shot or whatever, the wound became infected, they'd have to amputate. We had some great Civil War nurses that came out of the Civil War. Dorothea Dix, who was nicknamed the Dragon. She was very, very strict about her nurse. She was the first superintendent of Army nurses. She even kicked the Sisters of Charity out because this was an Army installation and she's going to have her nurses. And she was very, very strict that her nurses were over 30, very plain looking, had no intentions of romance, be very physically and mentally strong. They had to wear black or brown, and she even turned away other nuns because she thought they looked too pretty.
Wow.
So, but obviously she couldn't be everywhere at every battle, so you had thousands of other volunteers, women and men. Now the men had a group that they were called invalids. They weren't well enough to go back to battle, but they were still able to help. So they had male nurses back during the Civil War. The nurses that did volunteer had very little training. I think Dorothea Dix maybe put 2 to 3 weeks of training. Others were just what they knew as a mother, a woman, being able to take care of somebody. Used a lot of home remedies, and or if they had been an apprentice, say their father was a doctor, their cousin was a doctor, that's how they used some of their medical knowledge. The wagon that we have over here is an actual Civil War ambulance, and that was used to go out on the battlefield, and they would collect the bodies of the wounded. Clara Barton was another famous Civil War nurse. She was known as the angel of the battlefield. She would go out at night with her lantern looking for wounded that were missed or left for dead. The wagon was also used to carry away amputated parts. They'd fill it up with arms and legs. They would take it out, burn it, and bury the legs.
My name is Mark Rohelm, and I represent the Second World War United States Soldier. I have an M1 helmet, an M1 rifle that fires the 30-06 round. On my back, I have a trenching tool.
Thank you.
A 1910 bayonet.
Straight back there.
On my front, I have a 1923 cartridge belt, which contains 10 clips, 30-06 ammunition. On my right. All this stuff weighs about 25 pounds. It's all on.
Yeah, my mom did.
My clothing is herringbone twill, HBT for short. It's relatively light, comfortable, flexible.
Long time after
better than the World War I counterparts.
Hi, my name is Brett Griffith, and normally I'm a history and archaeology teacher, but I'm also big into reenacting. Today I am portraying a World War I American doughboy. So the uniform, all the equipment I'm wearing, other than my boots, are original World War I. So I have a very heavy wool uniform on, spats on to protect my lower legs and tops of my boots. I have a webbing belt with ammunition, a very long bayonet. World War I era bayonets were much longer than the later World War II ones because you might be expected to still fight cavalry, believe it or not. I have a first aid pouch here on my hip. This is the gas mask ready pouch, so normally there would be a gas mask in here. If there was a gas attack, my gas mask would come out and go immediately on. I have a Brody helmet on. It's not real protective other than from the top of your head because in World War I, trench warfare was the norm. Most of the wounds are from the top of the head once trench warfare began, so that's why helmets were readopted after being abandoned for over 200 years by the militaries of the world. So the helmet will stop shrapnel, it would stop pistol bullets. If it got hit a glancing blow from long range, it might stop a rifle bullet, but it's going to be a really bad day for you if you get hit in it while you're wearing or if you get hit by a rifle while you're wearing this helmet. If I turn around, at my back, I'm wearing the model 1910 field pack. Below it, there's an extension nicknamed a diaper that allows you to have a longer pack. It turns into a long pack. The long pack, I carry a shelter half in it, stakes, tent poles, just like a soldier would carry today. Like a tent, they take their half of the shelter and combine it with half of another soldier. I have a model 1910 entrenching tool, which is a really small shovel. And I have a little pouch on the very top, which has the mess kit in it, which is called a meat tin, which is where you carry your silverware. The rifle itself, what I'm carrying here today is an SMLE. This is a .303 caliber short magazine Lee Enfield rifle. This was actually the rifle used by the British and the British Commonwealth in World War I. 3 American divisions did carry this rifle during the war because they were put in line alongside the British, and to simplify logistics, they were issued SMLEs. The SMLE, despite not being as famous as the model 1903 Springfield rifle or the P-17 Enfield, the SMLE is probably actually the best bolt-action battle rifle that was ever used. Partly due to reliability and partly because, unlike all the other rifles used in World War I, it has a 10-round magazine. The enemy rifles, such as this Mauser, only had 5-round magazines. Huge advantage in combat. Thank you.
My name is Patrick Henry, of course. I was governor of Virginia 5 times over, and I was born in 1736, which is old-style calendar. That was before we made the change of the 11 days difference in the calendars, from the Julian to the Gregorian. And governor of Virginia 5 times. They wanted me to run for a 6th time, and I refused to run the last time. Tom Nelson was also a governor. Several other people that you may have heard of. John Page, other Virginia patriots. George Mason and myself wrote the Virginia Declaration of Rights. Virginians had constitutional rights within the state of Virginia long before the federal government decided to do that in 1789. And George Mason and myself are probably the ones responsible for the federal declaration, our Bill of Rights, because we refused to sign the Constitution until there was a Bill of Rights attached to it. Mr. Madison, although a very, very smart young fellow, somewhat naive in that he didn't believe that the government would trample on personal rights. However, my own experience has been, and from my experiences in reading history books, that governments always trample upon personal rights. So, by us putting pressure upon Madison and other Federalists, by other states that had not ratified decided that I had a valid point, and so did Mr. Mason, and they also insisted upon a personal Bill of Rights to be put into the Constitution so that people would not have to fight the government for their rights on it. So essentially that's pretty much what I did. Now I was offered a job, several jobs as a matter of fact, by our first president, George Washington, whom I knew quite well from serving within the House of Burgesses with him in Virginia, and he offered me the job of the first Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and of which I turned down. And after that, he offered me the position of to be his Secretary of State in his administration, which I turned down. And after that, he offered me a choice of whether I wanted to be the ambassador to France or the ambassador to Spain, which I turned down. Now, many people say, Mr. Henry, why did you turn down all those jobs? Well, there's only one reason why I would turn them down. It's because my beloved Virginia needed leadership and not the strong central government which they espoused. And my loyalty has always been to my country, Virginia. And quite possibly when we adopt a Bill of Rights for this Constitution, for this strong central government, why, I will even find a place in my heart for loyalty to a strong central government. But until then, until that time comes, I verify again and again that the right to tax is a right to destroy. And a right to tax means to take your property and give it to someone else. And I will never go along with that unless it's absolutely fair and equitable. Because property is the basis of liberty and freedom. Private ownership of property, one of the three main basis of freedom, liberty.
And it's about Morgan's raid during July of 1863 when the Confederates came up into Ohio. And they came right here to Camp Denison, and they shelled Camp Denison. And then the map over there that you see of all the states, that traces the route that Morgan took as he came up north from Tennessee. And this picture in the back of the book is our home that was raided by the Confederates. They took 2 horses out of the barn. And the man living there at the time, Nathaniel Humphrey, was reimbursed $175 for the horses.